Tiny House Prepper.
Live simple, live free.
Hi everybody, I'm Bill.
And I'm Elizabeth with Tiny House Prepper.
And this is now part 3.
That's right. Three.
Part 3 of how to start prepping.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the first 2, I recommend that you start there. Otherwise you won't know what we're talking about.
Right.
So we'll put a link here for part 1 and then go on to part 2. And now we're going to pick up with part 3 where we left off at the end of part 2.
Yeah. Try to get it all in.
Right.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
See you soon.
Okay, next one, security. Security can be a real issue, especially if there's rioting in the streets and there's marauding, bands of people going, hungry people.
Marauding.
What did I say?
Marauding. That's cute.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
But you have to think about that, Now we believe in and support the Second Amendment, but we know of preppers who are armed to the teeth.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that's just silly.
Yeah.
That's not the way to go as far as I'm concerned. You don't want to get in a shootout with somebody, and
No, it's the last thing we want.
If it's a EOW light and the police are still around and somebody attacks you and you shoot, the police are going to be involved, and you don't want to get involved in that either. So as far as we are concerned, your best security is anonymity. Your best security is to remain completely anonymous. In other words, don't tell anybody what you're doing as far as prepping. Now that's sort of ironic that we're broadcasting to the world on YouTube what we're doing, but that's why we are very careful to not reveal our location. A lot of people have asked where we live, and the most we'll say is in the Northeast. So I hope you understand that. We're trying to remain anonymous at least the best we can.
Right.
But don't tell your neighbors about it. Don't tell anybody about it unless part of your security can be if you band together with other like-minded people who are also preppers, then you can share each other's ideas and support each other and help.
Right. In other words, if you can work something out so that you've got kind of a community, that's a wonderful thing.
Right.
That is absolutely a wonderful thing.
But just don't broadcast to all your neighbors what you're doing. Otherwise, when the balloon goes up, they'll all be knocking at your door, and your 2 years of worth of food is going to last you about 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I just, we want everybody to be prepared as much as we possibly can. And I said this on the thing when we were doing it with Barry, with our son, for the comparing homesteading and prepping. If somebody was hungry at my door and I had some soup, I'd feed him.
Sure.
But I don't want to have thugs and crooks, giving us a rough time. You want to be loving and gentle but wise.
Right.
Then that's trust it to the Lord, but be as wise as you can about stuff.
As I was editing the video, getting it ready to put up on YouTube, I realized that there's another major point that I have to make about security, and that is security related to gardens. If you have a garden, it's a great way to eat healthy, to eat a little cheaper, maybe to put up your own food toward your prepper stores. But it's a major problem with security because unless you live really secluded, everybody in the neighborhood is going to know that you have a garden. And especially if you're doing a little bit of homesteading and you have a garden and you have any kind of animals, chickens or goats or anything like that, everybody in the area is going to know that you've got that stuff. And it might provide for you now, but if all of a sudden the grocery store shelves are bare and everybody knows you have a garden, there's a good chance that your garden will also be bare within a few days as people raid it, because there's no way to hide it unless you sit out there 24/7 with a shotgun protecting it, and that's not really an option either. So the more I think about it, the more I really think that for most of us who live in a semi-populated area or more, I'm not sure that gardening is really even an option for long-term survival after the balloon goes up, because you can't remain anonymous. So if you're planning to use a garden for that, I just suggest that you really think through carefully the whole security issue in relating to your garden and or your animals that everybody knows that you have.
Okay, light.
Light sources. If you have a solar system, then you can plug in. No big deal. There are solar powered flashlights.
In fact, we've got those.
One, I've got one in the other room.
We have solar powered and crank powered flashlights and radio.
Right.
That's a good thing to have, by the way. You can crank it or the solar for radio and for flashlight.
Right.
They're easy to find.
Or,
LL Bean, lots of places have
right.
them.
Or, of course, candles or oil lanterns.
Yep.
Here's one of our
And we showed that in the kitchen part, right?
oil lanterns. Yes, we showed that.
Yep. Notice that it's got a metal bottom on it.
We had some of these that also had a glass base, and we got rid of them.
We like the metal
And
base.
we like the metal base just because it's sturdier and it's not as. You can still break the globe, but there's not as much chance of breaking the bottom. These, if you have 2 or 3 of these in a room, it's amazing how light it can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the oil will last forever. I mean, you can burn it up; it won't last. I mean, it'll store forever.
Right. Yeah. Get oil. Yeah. It's, unless you got a miracle going on, make sure you got oil, and it will store.
You got a miracle going on.
You got a miracle going here, but it'll store a long time. And if you want to use those, make sure you got the oil you need for them. Absolutely. And there's all sorts of stuff all over the place. On YouTube and stuff about different ways you can make light sources, and they're kind of neat. But do something that's really going to work and try it ahead of time. The other night we sat and watched a movie by lantern light, just to see what the lantern light would be like. Yeah, we were still watching a movie, but yeah. So.
Yeah, when I was young, I was so poor we didn't have electricity. We had to watch the TV by candlelight.
That's right. That's right. Yep. I had a hand cranked, remote. Oh goodness. Okay. All right. Laundry. There's, think about it. How would you get your clothes clean? And it can be, I tell you what, it can be just as simple a matter as having some big old basin and putting a little bit of some kind of mild soap in there and just giving them a good scrub and hanging them on the line.
Right.
And there are wonderful things that you can get out there that are like hand-turned little washing machines that you can use. And so, but just think about your laundry and, think about, that's why I mentioned the towels. Do you have ones that are going to wash and dry easily? Little washcloths that'll wash and dry easily. And so you're not going to be having an endless source of paper towels. Have a bunch of them. You can store as much as you feel like you want, but in the long run, are you going to end up needing to have something that's going to take the place of that? And so, that's an easy thing to research. There's one we're kind of looking at somewhere down the line that you just hand turn it, and it was amazing how well that thing worked.
Yeah, and now you've mentioned it, everybody's going to know what it is, and I don't have a clue.
I know it. Listen, if we can track that back down again, we'll definitely give you guys a link or something.
I saw it on a video I was watching, but I would have to do some research again to try to find that video again. I don't bend that way.
Well, we will try to get information to you since I brought the whole thing up. But just realize there's neat stuff out there.
Yeah.
But main thing is just think about it. How would you wash clothes? Okay. All right, we're going to go through this. What about this? Okay. All right. Household supplies. Basic household supplies. Think about it. Do you have candles? Try to make sure you've got some batteries stored up. Be kind of careful to make sure that you have a system where you are actually using the batteries, and then you keep a store there so that you don't let the ones sit around somewhere until they go bad. See, what we want to avoid is setting up a prepping system where the stuff we've prepped with has been sitting there and it's all gone bad. So you use batteries, so rotate them, but always be sure you have a whole bunch of batteries. And, they're kind of like our canned goods. Just be sure you use them and put the new ones in the back.
Right, and it might be worth it if you just don't use them and they go bad to test them, and then it might be worth it to just throw them all out and buy some new ones every couple of years or whatever.
Yeah, don't think that you have a supply of batteries and then realize that you've let them all go bad. You've got to think about that with everything with prepping. Is this stuff still going to be good? It's one of the reasons why I try to use a lot of this stuff and then keep resupplying, because that way I'm just keeping an eye on whether it's still good or not. Lantern oil, we talked about that, if you're going to use it. Matches, or make sure you come up with something where you've got a flint kind of a thing, or something where you know you can start fires. That's a good idea anyway. But if you want to be sure and have a lot of matches on hand available for you.
And it wouldn't hurt to learn how to start a fire with rubbing two sticks together. No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
it can be done.
Come up with a way to be able to start a fire where if you don't have your matches, you can still do it.
Right.
Being able to start a fire is life and death. It's extremely important. So one way or another, make sure that you have backup systems for fire. That's just really, really important. And there's things out there that you can get that work, and learning how to do it. Okay, all sorts of things that wind. If you want a clock, get one that winds. Make sure you got wind clocks. And find out what you would want to use for some cleaning supplies. This is where going natural can be great, because still soap is wonderful, vinegar is wonderful. Kind of get a handle on things that you'd like to use for cleaning, and either stock up a whole bunch, or at least start to learn what you want to use and have a bunch of that available. Rather than, I'll be perfectly honest, I think I'm better off having a few things that I've learned how to apply to different circumstances than to try to stock up on all my little favorite cleaning materials. But have enough for a short-term problem. Make sure you've got extra of the stuff you use all the time.
Let's do this and then
Okay, this actually ties in.
Yeah.
When we talk about entertainment, don't underestimate how important that can be.
Especially if you've got young kids.
Yes. And let's be honest, we live in a world where people are they're fastened to some sort of a game, smartphony, something all the time. I mean, and all sorts of video games, and the grandkids love Netflix and just all sorts of stuff like that. So what do you have around so that you can do stuff together, or there's still stuff that would be interesting for them to do? Do you have paper? It's a good idea. Make sure you've got some extra paper. Have extra pens and pencils. Have some crayons stocked away. Don't let the pens get sold. You can't use them, by the way. Once again, think about it. Recycle them. But are all of your books e-books? Do you have... we live in a tiny house, so obviously we're not going to have tons of books around. But I do have some that I really love that I'm making a point of hanging on to. Do you have books that can be read? Do you have cards that you could play games with the kids? Or do you have any games you can do? Any way to create music? Of course, that's big for us. And, can you create music? What can you do with the kids? That's where things like having popcorn around can be really wonderful. Badminton. Yeah, seriously.
Just think about what can you do with kids when all of their electronic gadgets go away.
Right. And, of course, get it that they can go outside and pretend and run around and have fun, but just think about what would I like to have around, so that on an evening when we just got some lanterns going, we can do something fun for a little bit. Experiment. We're going to be talking about this a little bit more, but try a night with no electricity or no electronic gadgets. Try some games. Go outside with the kids, because they still have to have, you not only have to maintain your health, you have to maintain your sanity. And that's really, really important. Okay, we'll go back to this one. We're just going through this pretty fast here, folks.
A lot of financial planners who are liberals won't even acknowledge that we're in financial trouble in this country. But there are a lot of financial planners and economists who are conservative, who are saying, get out of anything paper. You got to invest your wealth into real assets. And they're basically talking gold, silver, and real estate. Real estate if there's no mortgage on it.
Which are all good. We can't afford gold, but that's all good stuff.
I don't know how much money you've got, whether you have a portfolio that you can put some of that into real property, real assets rather than paper assets, or if you're living hand in mouth, there's not much you can, or paycheck to paycheck, there's not a whole lot to be concerned with there. But think about that. You know, I'm not a financial planner, so I'm not going to give you advice there. But just to say, think about what's going to happen if the stock market crashes again. How are you going to preserve your wealth? Another thing I'll mention here just briefly, and most people don't even think about it, but Thrive Foods is actually a good way to preserve some of that wealth. Now, I'm not saying take your $400,000 portfolio and buy $400,000 worth of food. That'd be crazy.
And we're saying Thrive because we like it and we use it.
Yeah,
but the general idea applies.
If you buy food now that's going to last 25 years, then anything that you invest in that food is going to get through any kind of a financial crash that we would have, where everybody else is completely lost everything, but you've got $10,000 worth of food that gets you through the crash, and you can eat on that food for the next 5 or 6 years. It's a way to get at least a portion of your wealth or your portfolio through that.
And honestly, food is just something you're going to have to get one way or the other.
Right, and if you're buying gold and silver, you can't eat that.
Right. Now, I mean, we're saying that those are still good investments. You know, owning a property free and clear that you can rent, that's a good investment. But we're also thinking about, everybody's got to eat, and having food that is going to be good all those years down the road, not only could it get you through a rough time or a crash, but the food just gets more expensive all the time. And so it's a hedge against future increases in the cost of food. When we get old enough and creaky enough, then, some of we may have a period of time where we don't even have to spend any money on food. And that's a pretty nice thing to think about when you're getting old and creaky, so.
Yeah, we're not creaky yet, we're just old.
Yeah, we're not too creaky yet. We have our creaky moments. I love you. Oh, gosh. Oh, my goodness. Okay, yeah. I want to just touch on this, and...
No, that was it.
Yeah, good. Woohoo! What was that? Yeah. Okay, we're just trying to be organized here. Okay, couple things that also just please think about. Are you, maintaining important hard copies? So much is done electronically now that, if there's something that you need a real record of and all the electricity disappears, do you have any way to have a copy of it? We have a spreadsheet. Like I said, I have saved for everything. That's how we can afford to live, is, I save ahead for everything we're going to need to do. And it's really fun lining my little ducks up in a row. And that way I know that when something comes down the line, I've got the money ready for it, and a little bit at a time. And it has worked wonderfully. But I'm careful to make sure that on a pretty regular basis, I make a hard copy of that. Because if I lose electricity, I won't even, even if I can get the money, like out of the bank or whatever, I won't know what was for what. So if you can think of something where it'd be really good for you to have a hard copy of something that now is only electronic or on the cloud, think about maybe making a hard copy. Because, we don't know for sure how well all the information would be maintained. Okay, now, domestic skills. That's the last thing I want to touch on. One of the ways that we can be able to be prepared is to be able to do things that right now we don't have to worry about doing, because we can buy them already done or someone else does it for us. If you can't go out and buy more clothing, do you have a needle and thread? Do you have some sewing things so that if buttons come off, you can put them back on again, or you can repair tears? It's not hard to learn to do that basic sewing. This doesn't necessarily mean you're sewing on a big sewing machine. If you didn't have electricity, that wouldn't do you any good anyway. But do you have basic sewing things, and do you know how to put a button on, or how to fix something? It could come in awfully handy. Do you know how to give just a basic rudimentary haircut to somebody? Do you have scissors that would do the job? By the way, you can't use everyday scissors for cutting hair. It'd be a good idea to get some scissors that are a good type for cutting hair. Getting your kids' bangs out of their eyes, or cutting the boys' hair, or something like that. Just being able to do it would be very useful in the long run. Do you know basics of first aid? Really think about that. If things get really rough, would you have a pretty good idea how to stop bleeding, how to help somebody get breathing again, how to get their heart going again, how to bandage something, how to avoid infection, how to treat shock? it's really worthwhile to become familiar with a lot of that. And I touched on this before, but if you've got food, do you know how to fix it? And have you gotten an idea or some recipes or something so you can put some variety into it, so that it doesn't get really horribly boring? We want to be able to try to make life still taste good and be kind of interesting even if times are hard. So, if you have it, can you fix it? If you have it, can you use it? And, so it really boils down to, do you have a plan for the things you would really need in your life? And everybody's got their own approach to things. We try to share with you some of our own ideas. We're not there yet, but we're really working hard on trying to get there. So I think that's our whole list there.
Like we said at the beginning, it's probably more difficult and complicated than you realize it is. But if you have a plan, it can actually be much easier than you think it can be. So what we've done here is try to give you a little bit of a plan. Hopefully you were writing down notes, of at least all the major categories. Toiletries, sanitation, of course, food and water, pet supplies, security. Just
transporting goods.
Just write down those things. If you haven't done it, you have to go back and listen to this whole thing again. But just write down the specific categories or systems in your house, and that'll give you a guideline, and you can set down. If you put it all down on paper, then you can see what you're doing, and you can take it in bite-sized pieces. You prioritize. Obviously, the most important thing is food, water, and heated shelter. And then, so you prioritize your time and your money to set those things into place, and then you can go down and look at some of the things that are maybe less critical, but still important.
Yes, less critical, but definitely still important. The whole prepping thing has not been that much different than the whole living in a tiny space thing. What is really important to you, and what are you really going to need for your life to be okay? I've had to think about that in terms of living in a small area,
right,
and also in terms of prepping. In the long run, if I think about going day to day and week to week, what are the things I'm going to sure wish I had? Whether that's some crayons for a grandkid or, water. So, all right.
Okay.
Thanks for hanging in there with us. We're really trying to give you some content here. Love you guys. It's a beautiful evening. It's got the windows open and the breeze coming through. Really enjoying that. And so
I really hope that this has been helpful to you. Like I said, write it all down, and you'll be a step ahead of everybody else.
Right.
And just keep plugging away at it.
And every step you take is going to be good in the long run.
Right.
Everything you could do like that is going to be good in the long run. You'll be glad that you have it in place. And so, all right. Well, listen. Thanks, guys. So.
Okay. God bless you. And if it's been helpful to you, subscribe, like, comment below. If you got any questions,
And we are trying to get back
Yep.
on every comment that we can. Man, you guys are awesome. We just appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
So, all right, Liz. This doesn't sound very simple, but when you got it in place, it is. It's a simple thing.
It really is.
So live simple,
And live free.
Okay. Bye bye.
Goodbye.